Hello, welcome to the world of Word.
Coming up, another word in your attic.
And if you enjoy this, visit our Patreon to find out more about our exclusives and our general work of national importance.
The link is in the notes below. And now, on with the show.
Word in your attic, a Zoom with a view.
Well, welcome to another edition of Word in Your Attic, and we are absolutely thrilled and delighted to be joined by our dear old pal from our days in magazine publishing, the former editor of Empire, the former editor before that of Smash Hits in the days when it sold 1 million copies, and before that he served his time in the trenches at Melody Maker. Fantastic to see you, Baz. Welcome. What is that? What's that T-shirt? Let's see the T-shirt. Barry McIlheney, here he is. What's that T-shirt?
The T-shirt.
Stand up.
I have to show you my shorts when I stand up.
Oh, gosh, very good.
That's good.
The legend is, of course, that in the 50s in London, you would find on the door of the various bed and breakfasts a sign that said, "No Irish, no blacks, no dogs." Now, the pedant in me is slightly annoyed that the T-shirt has changed the order.
Yeah.
That's right. The Irish have been moved down the chart.
Off the tongue, more blacks, more dogs, more Irish. But a chap in Brixton Market started knocking these up, and they are available online. And my children got me that for a recent birthday, so I thought I would wear it in honour of
this occasion.
Fantastic.
So how's this situation treating you, Barry?
Well, I mean, it has not changed that much. I was working for the last 10 years running the PPA, the Professional Publishers Association, and that was coming to an end anyway. So I was about to step back, transition, pivot into a new role anyway.
Pivot.
I'm not sure what that usually means.
Pivot and transition at the same time. Quite complicated. Yeah.
Sort of consultancy space, the very crowded consultancy. So in a way, I suppose I would have been going from full-time job to not full-time job as it was. This happened to coincide with all this madness, so it sort of accelerated that whole process. But I mean, it has. Apart from that, I'm quite happy with it. You know, I quite like being on my own in my sun-drenched Shoreditch loft here. And basically, I do the same thing every day. I go for a walk up the canal. I post images of my canal walks, which have got a considerable following on Facebook. Last week for the first time. And I come back here and I read and I do various bits and pieces. I'm doing a little bit of writing. I'm still doing some work for the PPA. We're having our virtual PPA awards next Tuesday, so I'm doing a bit for that. But really, just taking a few months off, which happens to coincide
with the whole of the world doing the same thing.
Yeah, do the same thing. Have you been through the old archive then and found some things that you can dig out and show us?
Well, I've been watching all of your Word in Your Attics. Fantastic, valuable service you're performing for the nation.
Yes.
Hoping to see you on the honours list this time next year. And I know you like a scrapbook.
Oh, we love a scrapbook.
Yes.
Which, so I grew up in Belfast, as you may know, and my mother was a sort of classic Belfast matriarch, very hard to impress. You know, I would ring her up and say, "Oh, Mum, I've been made editor of Smash Hits." Is that like the Christian Herald, Barry? Bigger than the Christian Herald, but so she was hard to impress, and I never thought she took any interest, as one doesn't, in my various goings on in London. And of course, when she died a few years ago, my brother and I, as we were clearing out the house, found one for Barry, one for Colin, my brother.
Oh, so she made the scrapbook.
She done it.
She actually made it. She compiled it of all your stuff. Oh, that's so touching.
And basically, the first half is full of school reports. I shall read you a school report from, let me get one, from about 1965, I think is the first one. Barry's ability far outweighs his effort. But he has a quick and lively mind and could go far. A pleasant and sunny disposition, he has been a pleasure to teach, although a little, in inverted commas, talkative at times. The pathway was already set in 1960.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Of course, it then goes into grammar school, where I would score very well in subjects such as English. His approach to essay writing was always fresh and imaginative, scoring 75. Chemistry, scoring 12 out of 100. Poor. Despite constant warnings, he has made little effort to learn the work and is too ready to engage in tomfoolery.
Tomfoolery.
That couldn't be more flattering. That's brilliant.
Or nor more accurate, I suspect.
Yeah.
And this then goes on into clippings from all manner of things, you know, from smash hits, the Belfast Telegraph, Campaign magazine. So, you know, a lovely touch that even though I would have felt that my mother was not in the slightest bit interested or have any understanding of my career, to actually find that she had put all of this away, it was rather heartwarming to find.
Shall I tell you, when I was editor of Smash Hits, which is a few years earlier, my mother used to go into the local newsagent near where she lived whenever there's a new issue of Smash Hits, and just open it and look at the masthead and look at my name saying Editor David Hepworth. And then after a couple of years or whatever, when I became kind of managing editor or whatever, she turned to it and it said Editor Mark Ellen. And she rang me up in a real state.
Who is this imposter? Have you lost your job?
Really? That's what she thought. That's how she'd been keeping a check of it.
I have to say that my mother used to actually go in and buy a copy of Smash Hits and wear the badges, the promotional badges. And the one that she wore all the time, because she said she thought it suited her, was Simple Minds. She didn't know what Simple Minds was, but she just wore it back saying Simple Minds. How sweet, isn't it?
When we lived in Paris, which would have been about 20 years ago now, we had spent a year in Paris launching FHM in France, FHM, upon a largely unsuspecting and, as it turned out, uncaring French author. And my mother came to visit us in Paris, which is a huge deal because, I mean, I think she'd been to England once.
I think she'd been to England.
She'd certainly never been to the continent. And so I went to meet her at Charles de Gaulle Airport because she was flying from Dublin, as it happened. She would have been about 80 at the time. We'd organised a chair for her to be wheeled through the airport. So it's a big moment. I'm there, you know, to greet her nice and early. And I see that the flight from Dublin has arrived. And I'm waiting for my mother to come, thinking she'd be quite near the end, you know, in the chair. And of course, who is marching towards me but Bono from U2? You can see where this is going. Who I knew, you know, quite well, because we'll talk about this in a moment. I'm sure, having been in Belfast and Dublin around that time, been in the band and played with U2, supporting them, interviewed them a number of times. So of course, it's Bono, and I think Regine Moylett was with them, his PR, and maybe one minder, but you know, relative, just the three of them. Barry Mac, you know, how you doing? Oh, Bono, you know, I'm slightly distracted because I'm waiting for my mother. He starts chatting, you know, live Dublin and da-da-da, what are you up? Oh, and he's just about to get into telling me about how he's working with them vendors and something. And I see my mother being wheeled towards him. So I have to do that thing that you never do, which is just cut the celebrity off. Well, anyway, Bob.
Yeah, fascinating. Talk to you later. What was your name again?
He and the retinue seem just shocked because this has not happened clearly for 25 years, that he has not been the person to stop the conversation.
Yeah.
My mother would say, you know, hey, who's that dear? Why is he wearing dark glasses in the airport?
There you go.
Does he work at EMAP? I said, no, it's Bono.
So Barry, have you still got any of your old records that you made?
Funny you should say that, Dave.
Go on.
One you prepared earlier. Because you were in a band called, you've got to fill people in. You were in Shock Treatment, which was in Belfast in about, 1980, 81. And the other groups would have been Stiff Little Fingers before you. There would have been Protex, Rudy, is that right?
Very good, Mark. You're very well informed.
Yeah, no, I remember because we talked to Peter Curran recently about his band Pig, who were contemporaries of yours.
I love the Peter Curran episode. You see, I know Peter as Deadly Pig because that was his name. So Pig was Deadly, Johnny, Jimmy, and Ronnie were the 4 members of Pig. They would graffiti spray the wall on the North Circular Road in Belfast. The future was Pig. It turned out not to be, but Pig were one of the many bands on the North Belfast scene at the time, along with Shock Treatment. So this was our first, can you see that? This is an EP that we did with the Outcasts.
With other groups, right?
Yeah.
And then we did our own single. It was a very rare copy.
Oh, wow.
With, a nicely sort of illustrated, sort of homage, we would say, to the Beat era, Jack Kerouac, etc. It was called Big Check Shirts, brackets, and Go to Coffee Bars, close brackets, with the lyrics printed in the back. Lyrics, of course, by one B. McIlheney, because in classic tradition, I had no real musical ability whatsoever. But a bit like Ian Rankin, who I was watching last night on your show, I would sing, I would shout from the front of the band, and was the lyricist. And there was Belfast in 1976. It's hard to describe quite how grim it was, because the city centre would be closed off completely in the evenings, all these security gates. You wouldn't really want to go out for fear of being kidnapped or assassinated. I mean, it was grim. The only sort of escapes you would have would be the weekly music press, particularly the NME. The old grey whistle test on television, Top of the Pops. And then in around 77, with the whole punk thing happening, there was Belfast's equivalent, I suppose, of the Sex Pistols Manchester Free Trade Hall gig, when the Clash came to the Ulster Hall and the gig was cancelled because of some insurance problem. It was a riot. But what happened was that, up until that point, you would think you were the only person in Belfast listening to this stuff. And of course, you would see the tribe who had gathered and think, my God, there are hundreds of us. All these bands exploded: the Outcasts, Rudy, Protex, Shock Treatment, Roof Rex, Big Self. The Stiff Little Fingers were the ones who, of course, went on initially to be the sort of poster boys of it. And I'd been at school with 2 of the bands. So the idea that the guys who were at school were suddenly on Top of the Pops was, of course, incredibly exciting and unbelievable, and made you think that possibly you could do something like that. So we changed our name from this will give you an idea of the quick journey, from the North Belfast Boogie Band.
None less punk.
Overnight we became Shock Treatment.
Fantastic.
That's brilliant. With Shock Treatment being an allusion to a Ramones song, wasn't it?
Ramones, yeah. Fingers was an advert song. So you had, quite a thriving scene. I mean, as Peter Curran was saying, even though it was Belfast, which is not exactly the kind of musical centre of the world at this time, even there was great conflict and competition between the various.
Definitely, yeah.
Sort of North Belfast scene, Rudy in East Belfast, Outcasts and Protex in South Belfast, maybe the Starjets in West Belfast, and then of course
Undertones and Derry,
which we just couldn't, wouldn't take seriously at all. Until you hear the Undertones and think, Christ, these guys are really good. And the Undertones just sort of took off. I've actually been, funnily enough, I've been writing about this of late for Sturdy Bailey's new magazine.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Stuart, who you will know, who I think took you on a guided tour, Dave.
He did. Well, Stuart was our guest of Word in Your Ear.
He's terrific.
His terrific book about music in Northern Ireland.
I love it that people are still launching paper magazines. Isn't that thrilling?
Stuart and his daughter, Betsy,
Oh, right, yes.
have done this magazine called Dig With It. Music, arts, and Nordy culture. Nordy being from Northern Ireland culture.
Yeah.
It appears, I'm not as close to it as you can imagine, but it appears as if there's quite a scene developing over there at the moment with all sorts of various bands. But he and his daughter have put this together, and in the second issue, they were looking for somebody to review a triple CD and DVD of Shell Shock Rock. Shell Shock Rock was the seminal movie made by John T. Davis in 78, 79. It's only a 42-minute short documentary, but won awards at the New York Film Festival, was banned on its release in Ireland, and has never really been seen or shown since. It was being released. So Stuart rang me up and said, is there any way you would be interested in writing about this? And I was thrilled to be asked, for a substantial fee of 0 pence. And I've just been
as is traditional.
I've just been reliving all of this stuff from 41 years ago, including Shock Treatment. Shock Treatment are on the compilation. So I've just said.
And you supported U2, didn't you? You were saying earlier.
We played with U2. U2. I mean, I wish I could say that at the time it was obvious, to me that U2 were the ones who were going to become the biggest band in the world. But really, there was no indication of that. I mean, U2 were one of 15 to 20 Dublin bands at the time, and they played a sort of not what is now a legendary series of gigs at a place called the Dandelion Market in the middle of Dublin, which is no longer there. It's now a shopping centre or something. And they would have different support acts on every. It was a Saturday afternoon, and we supported U2 there. We supported the Skids. We played the Ulster Hall. We were on the Battle of the Bands at the Ulster Hall with Rudy and Roofrex and the Outcasts. And of course, all of this has become famous through the movie Good Vibrations, which Terry Hooley, the sort of Tony Wilson figure of Belfast, that has become the kind of accepted narrative, and it's very hard to change that.
Absolutely,
it's not entirely how I remember it.
We talked about this in podcast recently. They've been a bit fast and loose with the truth.
I think so. There's a famous quote attributed to Terry, which is, New York had the haircuts, London had the trousers, Belfast had the reason. I mean, it's a brilliant quote, for punk rock because of the conflict that was going on. I don't know if he ever actually said that, but it's...
No.
Good Vibrations, the movie, is now a play and was running at the Lyric Theatre in Belfast, standing ovations every night. And I think has only come off because of the pandemic.
Right.
So what else have you got there? Have you got anything from the... well, you came over and worked on Melody Maker, didn't you, after the band?
Yeah. So I was doing the band in Belfast, and it sort of frittered out. We did a couple of singles. Thought at one stage this was going to be it. Turned out not to be it. And I did a couple of years working in the library in Belfast. I was the world's least likely librarian, as you can imagine. Literally, stamping your books and fining people for, when they bring back the latest Catherine Cookson 18 months overdue. That'll be 7 shillings, please. The great thing about working in the library was realizing I didn't want to work in the library for the rest of my life. And it gave nothing wrong with it, but it wasn't for me. And it gave me the chance to do a lot of reading. And I started writing. So I started being the Belfast correspondent for the Hot Press, which is sort of the Irish equivalent, I guess, of the NME. Yeah. Set up by a guy called Niall Stokes in 1978. And Niall is still editing the Hot Press. I saw him last year, 42 years later. He's still the editor. Not the editor-in-chief, not the manager. He's still editor. These hefty words, it was incredible.
Like Dylan Jones.
And I mean, I was very
slightly different salary, possibly.
Just a bit.
Slightly different wardrobe. I was very lucky. I got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Irish magazine industry.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, you did, yeah.
And Niall was there when this was 2 years ago, and I got the award from Niall, and it was just so amazing because he was the first person.
Yeah.
I wrote 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I was working in the library, sending off these reviews, and bands used to come to Belfast. They would sort of play in Belfast, pretty sure that nobody would see them. They'd warm up in Belfast for the British leg of the tour, and I would start sending reviews off to Hot Press and to Melody Maker. And I remember sitting in the library and Niall Stokes ringing me up. I just sort of stamped someone's book. And, hello, Niall, and he said, hi, Barry, do you fancy going to Aylesbury at the weekend to see...
Aylesbury?
right about Squeeze. They're playing at Aylesbury Friars, I suppose it would have been.
See, that's so thrilling, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And I said, I knew nothing at the time, you know. And I said, I'd love to, Niall, but I couldn't afford that, you know. He said those magic words, which if the film is ever made, will be the same. When he said, "I know the record company pay for everything." That's me off out the library, and door closes behind me forever. With London, put up in a very nice hotel, taken to Aylesbury, interviewed Squeeze. Ask them all the questions I've ever wanted to ask anyone.
You went in with a long
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
1,000-word Q&A.
They're sitting there rolling their eyes. Yeah.
Put it down by Bill Graham or some of the old packs and do a proper 700-word feature. That was my start, and eventually...
It's a boy, said Mrs. Difford, that fateful night when Chris came into the world. Yeah.
I'm a really boy at school.
Yeah.
And it sort of took off from there, and I left the library and I moved to London in 83, so 37 years ago, to start freelancing for the Melody Maker, because I'd started doing the odd thing for them. And here we are.
Oh, God.
Oh, right. How splendid that's the cover story. Is that Kevin Rowland?
No,
It's not.
it shows you how terrible an illustration is.
That's an illustration.
It's meant to be Bob Geldof.
Oh, my God, that's
Reef.
appalling.
Looks like Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Yeah, that's dreadful.
So basically, it's the review of 1985. So I'd been there for about a year. I will come to my Kevin.
I can't wait. I've heard it a million times. I can't wait to hear it again.
Never heard it before.
Yeah.
This was to celebrate Live Aid. This was 1985. The cover line, it's a review of the year. The cover line, get this, the year of giving generously.
Oh, okay.
As opposed
Snappy.
to we did there, as opposed to the year of
Quite
giving.
catchy, that is. Could go far.
Basically, I, like you two gentlemen, had been lucky enough to be at Live Aid because, looking back on it, nobody else in the Melody Maker wanted to go. Because, I mean, I was 24 or something at the time, and they were all, the people in the Melody Maker seemed very old to me. I mean, they were probably only in their early 30s, but some of them were married, some of them even had children, parish and thought, and I think they just didn't want to go into Wembley on a Saturday. You know, they wouldn't have been getting time and a half or double time for it, whereas I was the young freelancer who was just happy to get the gig. So off I went to Wembley Stadium, did the whole gig with the late great Carol Clerk. The two of us, as I remember it, went back to Carol's house, stayed up all night, obviously, fueled by various things, coughing, and wrote up the piece, took it to Jonesy's house, Alan Jones, the editor, over in Twickenham, laid it all out, took it to the printers. And that was, so I won, in a classic moment, I won the PPA Young Journalist of the Year feature
Right.
in for Live Aid, as celebrated with this Bob Geldof End of the Year cover.
Right.
The year before I moved on to Smash Hits.
Right.
The Kevin Rowland story.
Oh.
So Kevin, I mean, it's funny because I've got to know Kevin very well over the last however many years. But so I was a huge Dexys Midnight Runners fan. I was actually a member of the Intense Emotions fan club when I was living in Belfast. And because Dexys knew that I was working in the Melody Maker and I was a big Kevin Rowland fan, big Dexys fan, and the Don't Stand Me Down album come out, which is now regarded, I think, as the classic lost album. But they weren't doing any press for it. They'd already had the number one with Come On Eileen, had done Gino. We're a big act, and they decided to do one interview. And because they knew that I was the fan, they did it with me for the Melody Maker, guaranteed front cover. And I went and did the interview somewhere over in East London, and they were rehearsing in a school hall. And we just didn't really hit it off, which is strange considering, as I say, we've become quite good friends over the last few years. it wasn't a review. It was a Q&A, but obviously one edits the Q's and one edits the A's, to give a digested version of what had happened. It wasn't a particularly flattering profile, but it came out. It's on the cover of Melody Maker in, I think, 85. We think nothing more about it. Move on to the next issue, and didn't hear anything back from the record company that they've been particularly unhappy with it. And fast forward about a year to 1980, at least a year. I mean, the middle of 86, just before I joined Smash Hits. And I'm off, I walked down to the local cafe. The Melody Maker was in High Holborn at the time. So we walked down to New Oxford Street to get my coffee and my tuna sandwich, take it back to the office. And as I'm leaving the cafe, I sort of felt a tap on my back. And my jacket was pulled up over my head, and a series of blows start to
windmilling in, yeah, raining down
on me.
Pulling the jacket over the head is a bit of a kind of thug kind of manoeuvre, isn't it?
Described many years later as a seasoned scrapper technique.
Yeah.
And the jacket, and the coffee goes everywhere, and the sandwich, flies. And two things, of course, hit me. One is, oh my God, I'm being sort of mugged, at lunchtime here in London. And then, of course, the second one is, it's the singer from Dexys Midnight Runners. It's pop star Kevin Rowland. And we basically have a fight, which rolls out into the street.
So this is broad daylight. This is lunchtime in the West End of London, working day.
The traffic is stopped. The people are out at the cafe looking. Go on, son. The two of us are, toe to toe. And I don't know why.
Nobody tries to separate you. They're just encouraging you. Yeah.
And I did say at one point, what are you doing? And Kevin said something like, you never mentioned that bit about the middle classes. Or, that bit I said you didn't include that. We're having a kind of considered conversation about the piece whilst the fight is going on. And eventually came to our senses. And he disappeared off. And I go back to the office. And you know what it's like when you've had a shock. You're a bit sort of jumpy, and I was kind of a little bit upset and trying to process what had happened. And I go back to the Melody Maker office. And Alan Jones, the Jones boy, the legendary, editor who sort of brought me in, was there. And he said, "Oh, Baz, Baz, you okay, man?" And I said, "Yeah, sort of, sort of thinking he'll probably send me home, benevolent, with care to the youngster who's just been attacked in the street." I said, "I've just been attacked by," and he said, "Wow, did you know a woman?" I said, "Yeah, it's Kevin from Dexys." A bit shaken. Then he looked at his watch. He said, 400 words by 5 p.m. The piece, and then the correct response, of course.
What was the headline? Can you remember the headline?
I can't actually remember.
No, that's a great idea.
There's some play upon Dexys Midnight Punchers or something.
Oh, again.
And of course, the Melody Maker ran it as an exclusive, and it's picked up by the Nationals, and it's become one of those.
What's your most treasured memory of working at Smash Hits?
Well, I joined Smash Hits in 1986, and I was there for nearly 3 years. I guess. We were in a position where I got the whole team together. It was sort of firing on all cylinders. And Rick Astley came along at just the right time. And when you know that you're well set up, and somebody comes and you can just sort of ride this for all it's worth. And I think Rick Astley was probably the person with whom my era was. It wasn't necessarily the greatest era, in the history of pop. But we had Rick Astley, Ross, Kylie Minogue, Jason Donovan, Curiosity Killed the Cat, Brother Beyond, all the greats. And it was, of course, it was a period when I joined Smash Hits, it would have been selling half a million. It was by no means not working. It was selling 400,000 copies. But because, I guess, of the combination, well, one always likes to think at the time it's because we're brilliant, you know.
Yeah.
It was the combination of having a good team, having the right kind of pop stars come along, but also just at that time, you know, it was sort of, Smash Hits was a sort of oasis of colour, you know, in a very kind of monochrome world, and we took it to over 1 million copies. Which, looking back,
I can still remember two of your
Mind-boggling.
cover lines, which, unless I'm entirely mistaken, one was Ockeye, Jock Mackay, look at the state of the wets, about wet, and the other was Corky O'Reilly, it's Kylie. Am I right?
You're absolutely right. Word perfect. We sort of developed these snappy cover lines. But a lot of that would have been, I mean, Tom Hibbert obviously was there, Chris Heath, Mike Sutar. So Mike Sutar joined, you know, which again has become a sort of pub quiz question, which you guys will know, where I was looking for a staff writer, got down to the last two, and the two were Mike Sutar and a guy from Darlington called Jim Moyer.
Right, yes,
That's right.
Who was really good, but Mike sort of just edged it. And apparently I said to Mike Sutar, who's gone on to do great things, I said, well, I went with you, Mike, because you were funnier. You were funnier than another guy. Jim Moore, of course, 2 years later changes his name to Vic Reeves. The story becomes, I turned Vic Reeves down.
The man who turned down Vic Reeves, exactly.
It's not quite true. And I attended a charity pop quiz a few years ago with Richard Bacon hosting it with 700 people, Stringfellows, and we get to round 5, and the question is, which northern comedian was turned down for a job at Smash Hits? Of course, you're desperately trying, and it wasn't quite like that.
Yeah.
And Mike did really well, and half the answers, of course, were Peter Kay, as if you know, anyway. So Mike contributed a lot to those sort of cover lines, and we ended up selling over 1 million copies with the Yaz cover.
Oh, is that what it was? It was Yaz,
right.
was it?
My memory, again, it's 31 years ago, my memory of it is that the issue that first sold over 1 million was the poll winners issue, because it would have been TV, and Yaz had that huge hit single.
The Only Way Is Up, yeah, huge, enormous.
Which again is a good pop quiz question, you know, who was on the cover of the first million selling issue. And people sometimes think it's Jason and Kylie, or it was Brawl.
No.
It was Yaz, and I was brought back in. I don't know if you can see this. This is a bit of a rarity. This was the Michael Jackson 52-page special tribute issue. When Michael Jackson sadly died about 10 years ago now, it must be. And I was brought back in, which is a very strange experience, to edit a tribute issue of Smash Hits, particularly as I had dinner with Michael Jackson when I actually was the editor of Smash Hits.
Had you really? I didn't know.
I never knew that. We've known you all these years. You've never told us that. I swear to God.
Especially in reserve, just in case this
Go on.
ever happened. He came over, it would have been probably 88 on the Bad Tour. I mean, the absolute height of pomp. And there were no interviews being done, but as sometimes happened back then, you would be invited along by the record company. And it was myself. When I say I had dinner with them, it wasn't just me and him. But there were about 6 of us. Piers Morgan was there because he was the showbiz editor of The Sun at the time, Bizarre column. And a couple of other Fleet Street pop editors. John Blake, I think, perhaps.
Right.
And myself. And Michael was in his full regalia. You know, he years ahead of his time with the mask and the gloves. You know, would have looked perfectly at home in the current climate. I think his manager, who was at that time, was Frank DeLeon.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
The ponytail.
Who was in Goodfellas, I think. And we had a very bizarre dinner where, all I remember is he shook hands with me, had the glove. Hi, Barry. Had a very high-pitched voice. That was it. And we didn't really have any conversation. I was in classic smash hits, style at the time, had been encouraged to try to get him to draw a duck. If absolutely, then get the duck analysed. But
Draw.
that was a B2F, a B2F. Bubbles.
That's fantastic. That's the key smash hits question at the time, wasn't it?
Can you draw a duck?
Asking what colour is Tuesday, or
That's where the Adam Clear Off Clayton comes from, because you two were always known in smash hits as Bobo the Hedge, Adam Clear Off Clayton, and the other. And Adam Clear Off Clayton came because I went to what used to be known as the BPI Awards, now the Brits. And of course, remember, I just left Melody Maker. I'd been sort of regarded as a serious journalist, in the YouTube camp. I'd go over to Dublin and interview them for the Maker. But now I'm in Smash Hits, and my instructions in Smash Hits, even though I was editor, was, look, what can we do at the Brits? And the instructions with the brief was get everybody to draw a duck on a bit of paper. Take the ducks to a graphologist, a Covent Garden graphologist, from Darlington, and they would analyse it, and then you would print. You'd print the results. This duck belongs to a very forceful character. Oh, it's Phil Collins. So I go to the YouTube camp, who are sitting in a corner of whatever after show party we were at. And I suppose they're expecting, the usual, the Maker kind of, how'd the last album go? When are you working with them vendors again? And I'm like, oh, hey guys, any chance you could draw a duck for me? And you could just see what's happened to them. And Clayton, he didn't actually say clear off, he said something else. It came Adam Clear Off Clayton, and we would send some hapless over to Covent Garden the next day and had all the ducks analysed. Bingo, there's an
No, it's a glorious heritage, the Smash Hits heritage. Well, go on, what you got there?
Go on.
Alice Cooper signed.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Barry, yours in blood. Alice. Somebody you were talking about only recently, to Barry, Shakin' Stevens.
Oh,
yes. All the stars.
He's got all the important ones.
Yeah.
Wonder.
Stevie Wonder.
No autographs. Thumbprint.
Thumbprint.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I was particularly pleased with that one because I share a birthday with Stevie Wonder. Not the same year, I hasten to add.
No, sure.
Born on May the 13th. Myself, Stevie Wonder, and Selena Scott.
Okay.
All the greats. I have only a couple more things to show you.
Go on.
I have various passes. So, obviously, after Smash Hits, I moved on to launch Empire magazine. So I know you like a laminate.
Oh, okay. Go on.
We have
What's
this.
I can't see. Cannes Film Festival, is it? I don't know.
The Cannes Film Festival, 1989, when we launched Empire magazine, actually in the south of France. We'd no idea what we were doing. I didn't really know where Cannes was, as you can imagine. We almost certainly would have called it Cannes, the Cannes Film Festival. When I was offered the job in Empire, Tom Maloney, who you will both know, who was the sort of big boss at the time, took me out to the pub, which is a time-honoured way of doing it. And he said, we're launching a film version of Q, which you guys have done. Would you be interested in being the editor? And I said, I don't know anything about films, Tom. Films, Tom. And rather than him saying, you can't even say the word, I'm sorry we had this conversation, he said, That's why you'd be perfect for the job.
Yes, Tom.
It's very tall. They obviously they didn't want a film buff. They wanted somebody who had no idea about films, but who just sort of like going to the movies and saying, what was good rather than what was terrible.
Yeah.
And I remember, we did the sort of board presentation of, here's the launch plan. And I think off the top of my head, I said we could launch it at Cannes, Film Festival in Cannes.
Cannes Film Festival.
Film Festival, trying to desperately get this thing off the ground. And Tom or Kevin Anderson, we said, that's a good idea. Now we've got to find out where Cannes is. And off we went, and we took 7,000 copies. I don't have the launch issue, sadly. I've got the 100th issue here. But we took the launch issue, 7,000 copies with us all the way to the south of France, meaning to give them out. But nobody, you get so much stuff given to you, nobody was going to take a magazine. And the truth is, we had to dump about 6,500 of them in a lockup somewhere on the outskirts of Cannes. They're probably still there.
Still there to this day. Worth a lot of money, probably.
And be worth some money, exactly.
Worth a load
Treasure trove.
I wish I hadn't sold them along with all my vinyl.
Oh, well.
But yeah, so an Empire, and Empire, I've just got one more thing here, which is, you won't be able to see it, but it's a letter I got. And it's on the 19th of March, 1990, and I had written to this chap asking him for an interview. And it says, "Dear Barry, thank you for your letter and magazines. Due to the fact I only get 3 visits a month, it is not possible for me to see you. I wish circumstances were better, but they are not. I wish you luck with your magazine. I'm sure it will continue to be a great success. God bless you, Reg Kray."
Oh, my Lord.
This was the Krays movie, was starring the Kemp brothers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's come out in 1990. And of course, I thought, I know, we'll get an interview with Reg Kray. Managed to track him down somehow. Wrote that. This before emails, obviously, and got this letter back from Reg, which I kept and must get.
Treasure. Yeah.
Do anything for you.
Brilliant.
Barry, it's been a joy.
Really good fun.
It's been a joy to start the day the McIlheney way.
I would normally be off for breakfast now at Shoreditch House, of course, which is...
Oh, of course
you'd be having, mashed avocados on toast.
Somebody would be smashing an avocado for you.
Mashed within an inch of their life. But sadly, hasn't been open for 3 months, so that's the only thing I'm missing are my breakfasts. So I was doing a lot of media breakfast. And no more, so I'm going to it's very early, I'm going to put some toast on the coffee and then possibly a siesta this afternoon and off with school.
Well, don't overdo it, whatever.
It's very early. It's 10:15. What are you talking about, man? I've been up since about 5.
The old Howling Wolf magazine, you mean there are 2 10 o'clocks?
Brilliant, Baz.
We'll look forward to seeing you when this bloody war is over.
All right. Fantastic.
Alex, are you all right? Have you got that?